Well, this is the battle that everyone's been waiting for. It's the clash of the titans. It's the heavyweight match. It's the Ford Endeavour versus the freshly launched Toyota Fortuner. Both these SUVs are in their new avatars. They are mammoth and have 7 seats and are built tough. This Fortuner has moved from simple to extravagant. Thin headlamps flank a sharp V-shaped grille. There's a nose that sticks out and the sunken chin, with a dramatic kink along the window line at the C-pillar, which all add drama. The tail lights have gone slim too, and there's tons of chrome on every side. The Endeavour is a little more understated but still good looking. It uses a more conventional, upright, jacked up stance with large areas for wheel travel, making it look very much the dominating SUV. The squared off proportions, the huge grille and the bulging wheel arches all add to its beefy appeal. They are different, these two, in their looks. Whilst the Fortuner is in your face, the Endeavour stands quietly handsome. Though the Toyota Fortuner's interior may have more flair and more drama, I like this neat, simple, clean layout of the Ford Endeavour. It's smart and still pleasing to the eye. The light beige interior with the low dash line and the panoramic sunroof really open it up and make it feel nice and airy. In fact, the low dash line makes visibility better from the driver's seat too. It comes packed with features like terrain response system, where you have 4 different drive modes, and of course lots more. There is a high-tech instrument panel which is made up of an analog speedometer, flanked by 2 color screens that display everything from a tachometer to off-road settings to media and fuel information as well. Like I said, the Fortuner carries its drama onto the interior too. The central console is framed by 2 leather-bound vertical pillars and the double stitching feels rich. The same goes for the wood-trimmed steering wheel, which is festooned with buttons. The dash has a sort of cowl running over it and many layers. But all of it looks a bit too busy. There's perhaps too much going on here, with too many colors, too many textures and too many materials. Once you look closer, you also notice the plastics aren't really all that great, especially the wine-colored forwood liberally used around the gear lever. It doesn't feel as classy as intended to. Both cars get a wide range of features in their top spec forms. The Fortuner does get ahead with a few unique features. The list of things that Ford does have that the Toyota does not is much longer. Whilst we were stationary, we also checked out the last row of seats. Now, getting into the Fortuner is a bit of a haul, but you have a nice little grab handle here on the side that you can hang on to in case you want to haul yourself in. But what's really easy is getting into the 3rd row of seats with this one-touch flip. It's really easy access. And once you're inside, you realize that space is not bad at all, and even seat comfort is a lot better than the Endeavour, and you can recline these seats, which make them extremely comfortable if you don't have luggage at the back. The Endeavour's 3rd row is not so easy to access. You have to lift up the heavy middle row, and once you're inside, you sit very low to the ground and knees up. The 3rd row of both these cars split and flip to expand the luggage bay. The Ford's trick one-touch power folding seats are handy when your hands are full, whereas the Toyota's seats have to be lifted up and clamped to the side to free up most of the space. Both cars can take a big suitcase with the 3rd row up, but the Endeavour has a slightly lower loading lip. Moving over to the middle row, we set off to find out how these two match up on the road. The ride quality of the Endeavour leaves you feeling like you're sort of floating or gliding over the surfaces of the road. It's got a supple, pliant edge that sort of isolates you from everything that's going on underneath the tires. It doesn't let much filter through to the passengers at all. Yes, there is a certain amount of movement on undulating or bad section of road, and it is more than the Fortuner, but the movements are not sort of sharp or intrusive or jarring, and you still feel comfortable in this back seat. The Endeavour has a slight edge on legroom, but both middle rows have recline and slider functions, so one can adjust the amount of legroom required. The Endeavour seats are comfortable and offer good support, but it's the Fortuner that offers better thigh support and overall better cushioned seats. When considered on its own, the Toyota Fortuner has good enough ride quality, but when you compare it to the Endeavour, it does feel the firmer of the two. Sharper bumps and potholes filter in far more to the backseat of the Fortuner. As you pick up the pace on an undulating surface, you do get tossed around as well. Still, it is a closely fought battle in the backseat, with each one having their advantages, but let's find out how they are behind the wheel. First up, the Fortuner. Even though overall visibility is actually quite good and you have a lot of adjustment to the seat to get yourself quite high, the line of the dash, especially the central part, is quite high in the Fortuner, and it just makes it feel bigger and more imposing to drive. It's not just the high dash, but even the way the steering is that makes it the more imposing of the two to drive. The steering is also much heavier here, especially when you're turning at low speeds. And after a while of driving, especially if you've been driving the car the whole day, you begin to feel it. But that heaviness that makes it tougher to drive in traffic conditions makes it better to drive on the highways. Now, the steering may feel heavy while U-turning and at lower speeds in the city, but as you pick up the pace, it actually weighs in quite nicely, gives you a good sense of confidence. Even around the corners, you get good feedback. In fact, the good part about the Fortuner is that it has good body control, and roll around the corners is much better contained than in the Endeavour. Still, go over a bump or a speed breaker and it does have a sharp kickback, which is another disadvantage. In fact, when you do go over the speed breaker, you also notice the shortcomings of the gearbox. Slow down for a speed breaker, and should you want to floor the throttle and get going, the gearbox sometimes responds too sharply, kicking down aggressively. This makes the power delivery feel a little jerky. But that's only if you are aggressive on the throttle. Be gentler, and the fact of the matter is that the Fortuner's brand new 2.8-litre 4-cylinder motor that makes 177 HP and 450 Nm of torque is the one that feels the better of the two in traffic. The Fortuner's engine is quite responsive, it's nice. Say you slow down and you have to get a move on again, all you have to do is actually just tap your foot on the accelerator. You really don't need large inputs to get going again. It feels even better when you put it in power mode with the auto gearbox in sport. It also has eco and normal modes, which the Endeavour does without. The pep lowdown makes it great for hustling the big Toyota in traffic, and the 6-speed auto does a good job of keeping up too. However, the Toyota is best when you shift up without stretching it all the way to the red line. Now, the one thing that the Fortuner has that the Endeavour doesn't have are paddle shifts, which comes in quite handy, especially when you want to get a quick move on, make an overtake, or even when you have to slow down in a hurry. In fact, everything about the Fortuner begs you to be less aggressive while driving it. There is an audible clatter from the engine at most times, and if you push it hard, you definitely hear it quite loudly. Shifting over to the Endeavour, there are differences that you notice instantly. The first thing you really notice, especially getting out of the parking spot, is how easy and light the steering of the Endeavour is. I mean, it just makes this feel like a car, not like a big, huge SUV. In fact, it is 150 kilos heavier than the Fortuner, but it just doesn't feel like that. It feels far more agile and nimble on its feet. Making a U-turn in the Endeavour is way easier and less of a workout than in the Fortuner. The lower dash line and the better seating position make the Endeavour feel less bulky than it looks. Now, the steering of the Endeavour may feel light and easy at low speeds, but when you're cornering at higher speeds, it still gives you a good amount of feedback, weighs up really nicely, and I think this is the strength of the Endeavour, its steering, which really makes it adaptable to both kind of conditions, whether it's ambling around in city traffic or cruising out on a highway. The Endeavour's 3.2-litre 5-cylinder engine punches out 200 HP and 470 Nm. The Ford gets to the 100 mark quicker than the Toyota, but what's more relevant is how these two motors make their power. The Endeavour's engine may not be as responsive as that of the Fortuner, but it's still good enough, deals with most conditions easily. And once you get into the meat of the power band, it really has a good amount of punch. There's more lag to get through at the bottom end, but it's more eager to rev out, letting you access a much wider power band once you do. So it does have the punch, but you just have to go a little further to access it. The Endeavour's engine has a healthy dose of torque and it offers up performance quite easily. Put your foot down and you get a big giant surge. Cruising at highway speeds is really easy. As far as refinement is concerned, it is also audible, but it does have the advantage. It feels definitely the more refined of the two. Yes, it also does make a sound, but it's more a roar than a clatter. Just combined, with the lighter steering and the way performance is delivered, the Endeavour just feels the easier to drive SUV. There's really very little that unsettles the Endeavour. Even mid-corner bumps really don't harm it, and it just drives in the most unfettered, unruffled manner. Now these are full 4x4 SUVs, but our test terrain didn't really provide serious off-road conditions, just small runabout dirt tracks. The new Fortuner has moved from full-time four-wheel drive to select four-wheel drive, so you can use it in two-wheel to save fuel most of the time. It also has a low-range mode in case you want to do some serious rock crawling. The Endeavour also has the low-range mode and it also lets you lock the rear differential, but it doesn't let you disengage the front drive shafts manually. What it has instead is an electronic traction control system that is called terrain management. It also adjusts all the car's parameters depending on the mode you choose. Our test team, however, did manage to do some more serious off-roading. And here are some snapshots to tell you why the Fortuner came out ahead. Both have incredibly high approach and departure angles, meaning they can ascend and descend really steep slopes. However, though the Endeavour has the higher ground clearance on paper, its longer wheelbase means its breakover angle is smaller, meaning it's not as good at crossing tall obstacles as the Fortuner. All things considered, it's the Toyota with the stronger low-end run and manually controlled 4x4 that is the more effortless on the rough stuff. Now, the old Toyota Fortuner was king of its segment and hard to dislodge. But this new Fortuner has a very worthy contender in the form of the Ford Endeavour. The Fortuner has the better third row and it has the better overall seat comfort. But in other respects, we feel that it is the Endeavour that edges out ahead. It's just the ease of driving of the Endeavour. It feels light on its feet. It's nice, easy steering that makes it comfortable to drive in traffic. It doesn't feel as big and imposing as the Fortuner, and even as far as performance goes, it's good. As far as space goes, it's closely fought between the two, but in terms of overall comfort, the ride quality of the Endeavour is better, being more supple, and it isolates you better from the road. It has the bigger boot, and it comes at better value. So for all those reasons, we feel the Ford Endeavour is the better buy.